Hi chess fans, we're looking at the game between Magnus Carlsen with white and Hikaru Nakamura with black. The game was played in round 9 of the Sinquefield Cup 2018 in St. Louis, and Magnus won, which tied him for first place with Fabiano. Carlsen played the Reti opening, knight f3, knight f6, d4, e6, c4, d5, knight e3, bishop e7, bishop f4, castle e3, b6, and we are reaching this position here. And black has two isolated pawns and white has two connected pawns, otherwise the position is relatively equal. Castle, knight c6, rook a c1, rook c8, knight e5, queen b6, knight takes, rook takes, and after b3, h6, rook fd1, queen b7, h3, rook fc8, knight a4, all logical moves, attacking the pawn, knight to d7 protecting the pawn, rook d2 attempting to double the rooks, knight b6, and now Carlsen played knight takes knight. And training question number 1 of this video: should black take with the pawn and connect his pawns? In the game, Hikaru played rook takes, arguably keeping the weakness of the two pawns. You might wonder, why did he not play a takes b? And the reason is that after rook cd1, threatening to attack the queen and the bishop, bishop f6, moving the bishop out, rook d7, the rook comes in anyways. In this position, black does not have the move queen a6, challenging this queen right away, but instead the queen has to move to a8, to a passive square, and this actually allows black to attack the king with bishop takes h6, and after g takes, check, king f8, queen h5, mates. So the position is already very tactical, and the reason is that after knight takes, look, all these pieces here are very well positioned to attack the king, and the other pieces are a little bit stuck and not ready to defend the king. So very interesting position. And rook takes was played, arguably already a little concession by Hikaru. The game continued, rook cd1, bishop f6, rook d7, so even though rook takes b6, white follows similar plans. And black already tries to bail out queen a6. And training question number 2, should white exchange queens? Okay, if white exchange queens here, black can actually equalize. After rook takes, attacking the pawn and protecting the pawn, and then c4, and after b takes, rook takes, the position is equal, and white could not capitalize on black's weakness of the two separated pawns. So that's why in this position here, Carlsen decided to play queen e4, leaving the pawn here to be taken. And training question number 3, should black now take this pawn on a2? And if not, what is white threatening? So let's have a look. After takes, white actually has bishop e5, attacking the bishop. And let's say after queen takes, if black is really greedy and wants to take pawns, black can take the bishop, and after g takes, rook d8 check, rook takes, king g7, queen g4, king h7, and mate. So that's why after queen takes, bishop b5, black probably wants to play rook e5, attacking the queen right away, but then queen f3, bishop takes, queen f7, king h7, queen e6 is also very unpleasant. So, but was possible. But as you can see here, white has an advantage because the king is open and the bishop will fall soon as well. So after queen e4, the game actually continued e5. Hikaru wants to take the square away from the bishop, and Carlsen takes bishop h6. And training question number 4, if black now takes the bishop, how does white mate? So why cannot black not take the bishop? After takes, white has rook takes f7, king takes, queen h7 check, rook e8, rook d7, and black can do nothing against the mate on f7. Very instructive tactical motive. So that's why black cannot take the bishop. The game continued rook e8, queen g4, and after queen takes, e4, queen takes, b3, bishop e3, rook b7, rook 76, bishop e7, rook 6, d5, attacking the pawns. Bishop f8, white wins back the pawn, and after these exchanges, queen e6, queen e2, rook d7, rook takes, queen takes. The position looks dead drawn. Should the players now just do a draw, or training question number 5, what should be white's plan? Okay, so the position is drawn, but if white wanted to continue to play, his plan should be to play against this pawn and against this king. And Carlsen does this by playing rook d5. And now let's have a look at how the game continued. The game just went on and on and on. White is attacking the pawn, slightly weakening the king, and they already hit the time control. This is very, very interesting how these grandmasters sometimes just play on. And after queen a2, white is finally offering to exchange the queens, or forcing to exchange the queens. And training question number 6, over the last 20 or so move, what has white done? Okay, so white has basically made a lot of moves that forced black to think. All of these queen moves. The king is super safe here, and this king, if anything, there's motives with this king, and this rook is being attacked by the queen. So black always has to calculate, and white was just making moves. And this is a technique that grandmasters often use to grind down the opponent. In a position where you are comfortable and nothing can happen to you, you just play on and continue putting pressure on your opponent. Especially if you get additional time with every move, it is rational to just tire down the opponent like this. Okay, but finally, white offers to exchange queens, and now the position is even more drawn. Okay, but white's Carlsen still plays on. Rook a6, training question number 7. Why is this the best square for the white rook? Okay, let's have a look at the next move. It is the best square for the rook because it now pins the king against the pawn. Or more generally speaking, this rook performs a double function. It stops this pawn, but it also can help with the attack by influencing also along this rank. And this pawn cannot advance, it's blocked, and it also ties down the rook to the defense of this pawn because the pawn is constantly attacked. So that's why the best square for the rook is on a6. And again, we actually have a position where white has no risk and black has all the risks. Okay, h4, also very interesting, always push the pawn that is on the side. After king h5, king h3, rook f7, g4 pushes the king back. And now after king g3, training question number 8, what is white threatening? Okay, if for example rook c7, white has g5, attacking the king and the pawn, And after king h6, white can win a pawn. And this pawn here cannot take because the king is being the pawn is being pinned against the king. And if the king, for example, moved over here, then the white king can invade with the threat of pushing forward this pawn. So that's why in this position Hikaru played the concession g5, which allows white, have a look at this position, what's the concession here, allows white to play h5, a passed pawn is worth a lot. And basically this ending now has taken a different character. If the rooks ever get exchanged, white will win the game, and the reason is that the black king has to stay in the square of this pawn, and this will allow white to invade and take these pawns. Alright, so the endgame now means if rooks are exchanged, it's not drawn, but white is winning. It's a big progress. Okay, king g7, king f2, rook b7, rook a3, king h6, king e3, a5. Look at this position, a5. Training question number 9. What is black saying with this move? Okay, that's a quick one because, but also very interesting one. Hikaru seems to be so pissed off right now. He says, look, this pawn, take it. This is what happened in the game. Black is saying, I can draw this position anyways. Tell me how you're going to win this position now. I'm just giving you this pawn. Okay, rook b, and indeed after rook b3, the king has to retreat. And after rook b2 check, the king is stuck here. And it seems like the king is never going to get out of here. So after king g7, rook a7, king g8, training question number 10. With what maneuver can white get his king out? Because it looks like black has a fortress. The king is just going to move back and forth here. And this rook totally makes sure that this king doesn't get out. So training question number 10, maybe the most interesting in this entire video. With which maneuver can white get his king out? Okay, very interesting. The maneuver is rook a1, then bringing the rook over to f1, to f2, and again the rook cannot exchange, and then the rook will go over here. So let's have a look. King g7, rook f1, rook a2, rook f2, offering to exchange the rooks, or else the rook has to move away. The rook does move away, because if it's exchanged, it's one endgame. Rook d2, and now the king can move out. Very interesting. So the king moves out, and in this position, rook d3, protecting the pawn here, and the king moves to the side and comes out this way. And in this position here, again, it seems that this king here is cut off by the rook, cannot come closer. Training question number 11. With what maneuver can white make his way forward? Okay, rook b3. Rook b3 keeps continuing to protect the f3 pawn, but also takes away the checks from behind. And now the king gets closer and closer. And in this position here, another very interesting maneuver. Training question number 12. How can white now, have a look at this maneuver of the rook. Very, very interesting how white can make progress. Rook to b6, attacking the pawn on f6. The king has to come up to defend. Then the check, pushing the king back again. And then rook c7, preparing the king to move over here. And rook b8 check, king c8, and now after rook b3, attacking the pawn. Black can actually now win this pawn, but it's actually a blunder to play like this. What is white's winning plan? Training question number 13. And the last training question in this video. Okay, White's plan is to move the king to the g6 square, play h6, and then together with the mating motives, force Black to retreat his rook, and then White will win all the pawns. Okay, this is a bit crazy, but a very, very interesting plan. Let's have a look. Rook takes f3, so it looks like White has given up a pawn and the rook comes in here and then collects these pawns. But indeed, king e6, rook f4 attacking the pawns, h6. And now if the rook takes a pawn, the pawn gives a quick check. And then the king comes in attacking the rook has to retreat maybe here. King g6, threatening mate. Okay, so that's why in this position the king moves away out of the check. White just plays rook b7, and then after king g8 gives a check with tempo, winning another tempo. And now the king moves to via f7 to g6, so the rook takes, and after king g6 Black realizes that he's in trouble and plays rook a4. So if he takes, for example, here, then it is rook e7, threatening mate, and after king to g8, h7 check, and then mate. So Black bails out and plays rook a7, but after rook h7, Hikaru resigned in view of king g8, rook e7 threatening mate, rook a8 forced, and now the white king just collects all the pawns. And the game is won. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this game and learned a lot from the 13 training questions, the tactics around the black king in the middle game, and the maneuvers of the rook in the end game. So Magnus Carlsen is tied for first place, and we're looking forward to watching the tie breaks. For now, thanks a lot for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you back here again soon.